Hi, I'm Ted Haptegaber, founder and producer of Live Talks Los Angeles. Thanks for joining us. Since we started over a decade ago, we have brought you hundreds of conversations with storytellers, writers, actors, musicians, humorists, chefs, and thought leaders in business and science. You can watch and hear most of these in our YouTube channel and our podcast. For details, visit livetalksla.org. And now, here's the show you've tuned in to see.
So, congratulations on the book.
Thank you, Jess.
Which I loved.
Well, you've read it the whole thing already?
Yeah, of course I read the whole thing.
Have people here read it, or you're just basically getting it tonight? Tonight, yeah, okay, all right, great. So
okay, the stories will all be
as
new.
If you haven't, as if you haven't read it, yeah.
I only read celebrity memoirs.
Oh,
it's
really?
all I've ever read, and I can tell you, it's just fantastic. It's great. Rebel Rising is the book. What made you decide to write a book? I mean, you're young to be writing a memoir, and I know that that was initially...
What age do normally people write it? Like, Barbra Streisand age, or like...
You're like 80 is respectable.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm still going. I still have a career.
But that was a concern, wasn't like in the very beginning?
Well, okay, it wasn't going to be a memoir. So originally, I spoke to Simon & Schuster, and I was going to do... I just lost a lot of weight in the year 2020, and so I thought, okay, I would do a book about like health. And then, so that's all it was like. I think it was just going to be called My Year of Health. And then as I started writing and talking about my relationship with food and like dealing with all the emotions, it became clear that all the emotional stuff was all sorts of things about my upbringing and my father and sexuality and all sorts of things. And so I started writing bits about that, and then my editor, Mindy, thought, oh, hang on, I think this is probably a memoir. And so we just shifted gear, and Year of Health becomes one chapter. But all this other stuff came out of it.
But it's very much it's a book about what was a traumatic childhood in some ways. Also interesting and fun, and this kind of great family in a lot of ways.
Yeah, my life was like that movie Best in Show.
Yeah.
Coming from a dog show family. And like secretly being allergic to dogs and not really being able to do anything about it because people are like, oh yeah, whatever. And I go, oh no, but I really like my nose itches when I'm around dogs, and no one like took me seriously. So like it was funny in that respect, but then also like I hated it at times.
What now that the book is out, there's been an enormous amount of press around the book. What is something from your life, because you're just putting it all out there for the world, what's something from the book, from your life, that people have really seized on and talk about constantly that surprised you?
That surprised... Well, there's things that haven't surprised me. I guess when you say something about another celebrity, whatever, the media's obviously going to latch on to that. Right. So like headline-wise, I guess people have been talking about the Sasha Baron Cohen stuff, which is not, which is only really in one chapter of the book, and the book's obviously not about that guy, but you wouldn't know it if you'd been watching the press on it. I mean, and then I guess the other headlines have been about I was, I guess, what you call a late bloomer. And then I lost my virginity at age 35, which there's a chapter about that in the book. And then I guess that's probably, but I guess that's not surprising either, because it is, you know, something, I guess, unusual for somebody to talk about, which is why I did want to talk about it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else surprising.
Those have been the two big headlines that came out. And when you read the book, yes, those are two very interesting things in the book, but it's just one part of your life. And so that's what I wanted to kind of go back all the way to the beginning, and you mentioned it a second ago. Your childhood, your family, they were on the dog show circuit. Really serious.
Yeah, not glamorous, like really.
really serious beagle people.
Yeah, we're in beagles, which is an English hunting dog, traditionally, and and then I knew quite early on that I wanted to make money. And that was really important to me.
Because there was not a lot of money.
No, there wasn't, and it was a big source of tension in my family. And so my first little business was reaching into the trash bins at the dog shows and reaching in and collecting the soda cans to recycle them for the aluminium in the cans. So I'd get like the can of Coke, and I'd crush it with my little like 7-year-old foot, and then I'd put it all in the trash bags. And if I filled up a whole bag, I could get like $5 or $6. And so at a big dog show, I could, get like 2 full bags, and I'd go and you go to the aluminium place and hang them up, and they'd weigh them, and you'd get the cash. And I really that was my first business at the dog show. But it was grotty because like when you're reaching into bins, you get all bin juice.
You're digging
everywhere.
through trash.
Yeah, I know. It is disgusting if you think about it. And there were often bees and flies. We have a lot of flies in Australia, so if you got the bin juice all over you, you'd get like bees and flies. And it was just, the dog shows like in Australia weren't very, it's not like Westminster that you see on TV here. It was very low rent.
And it's always surprising, you say this in the book, that people assume that you were this bold, outgoing, rambunctious young girl, and you weren't. You were really shy and introverted.
Yeah, like severely shy, bordering on some kind of social disorder, I think, but again, never got diagnosed because in Australia they don't really care. But bordering on, until I was about like 13, 14, and I read this article saying that what your personality is at 15 will be your personality for life. And then I was like, I'm like so close to 15, I need to change. And I didn't want to be like, so shy and like have no friends, and I just didn't want that as my life, and so I forced myself to change. Thanks to that article, it was very strict about whatever you are at 15 will be your personality.
I also love in the book you talk about coming across a bunch of self-help tapes.
Yeah.
That had actually a pretty tremendous impact.
Yeah, and I think it came becoming a teenager and stuff, and I was it felt, very isolating, and I felt, mentally not in a great space and didn't have many friends. And then I find in my dad's trunk of his car this gym bag, and I go, what's that? And I open it up, and it's all these cassette tapes, and I put on one, and it was called How to Win Friends and Influence People, and I thought, I could get popular. And I listened to all these tapes, and then nobody ever mentioned, my dad never mentioned the tapes or where they'd gone to, because I had just had them in my bedroom for 2 weeks, and I listened to all of them, and I started thinking I'm not happy in myself and in my life, and I can make a difference. And I think the sad part is that I probably think my dad was wanting to help himself, and that's why he got these tapes from the local library or somewhere, and and then maybe he was embarrassed that he never, and so he never brought them up to me. I just took the tapes, listened to them, and then returned them all to the trunk of his car when I was finished. But they had great tips in them that I then utilised to become really popular at high school. There are tricks you can learn.
The arc that you take with your dad in the book is incredibly moving, and I won't get that deep into it because you don't. It's a story and you don't know what the ending is going to be, and it's incredibly moving. He's passed away, but he was a complicated guy. You describe it. There was a lot of anger in the household because of him. You described him as a red-faced giant at one point, and did that have something to do with you feeling shy and introverted early on?
I think it did, because I look at kids, nowadays, and I was like, God, I would never have done anything naughty, or I never would have misbehaved, or I never would have spoke up, or because I was too scared of my father, and so I was probably the world's best child in a way. And I think, because I was scared of him, and he had, again, I don't know what kind of personality thing he had, because never diagnosed in Australia. But he kind of had difficulty processing emotions. His father died when he was 18 suddenly, and so he just couldn't really process emotions or anger properly.
What was the seminal moment that you feel like set you on the path to becoming an actress? I know there were a couple of important events. One was seeing 42nd Street.
Oh yeah, so our dog auditioned. The first experience I had with the entertainment industry is that our dogs had agents, because they were really the stars. They were really the stars of the show.
Got all the attention.
Yeah, and to the point now I now have, whenever I see dogs, I'm like, a bit scarred by it. But so our dog had auditioned for 42nd Street, got to the callbacks. It had to come on the stage to the actress when the actress called the dog. So our dog comes and then just poops on the stage and doesn't even go to the actress. So it doesn't get the job. And then my mum was like, well, I want to see what bitch got it. So she bought us tickets to see the musical, 42nd Street, and we'd never been to see a musical before. So we went, and I was like, oh, what is this? People singing and dancing. It was amazing to me. So I do have to thank the dogs for introducing me to musical theatre because of that. And then, but then the real thing of how I got into acting, which is kind of, I think it's an original story. I don't know of any other actor that's had this happen. But basically, I write in the book how I went to Africa for a year after high school, and I got malaria really bad, and could have, it was a really nasty, terrible strain.
What does malaria feel like?
It's kind of like, to me, it's like a voodoo disease. It's not like getting COVID or something. It's you kind of feel like not in your body. And shaking and sweating and just I'm not physically there. It was really something else. And I know the day I got it because I woke up, we were sleeping in the bush, and then I woke up and I had 100 mosquito bites on one side of my face that was exposed. And I was like, oh damn, the chances of getting malaria are really high. And then 2 weeks later it develops in your system and then it just really hits you. And I went into hospital and had this, they give you hardcore drugs to get rid of it, and it's really awful. I lost my hearing because the drugs were so powerful, and so I'm just there in an Afrikaans hospital, hallucinating like this, and then I hallucinated that I was an actress and that I was really great, and that I win an Academy Award, and it was so real. I still remember everything about it. And that I get up and I do an acceptance rap speech because I loved rapping, which is also a story in the book that I had a rap group with my sister, but we weren't very good. And then I had this hallucination that I was an actress and that I was great. And then I come out of the hospital and I say, oh, I'm going to become an actress now. And everyone's like, no, no, you will never be an actress. You're not good at that. You're a smart girl. You should, do something with your brains. They're like, no, you'll never be an actress. And I said, no, I've seen it. I saw it. And I don't know whether it was some kind of vision or it was something subconsciously I had, just some desire that I'd never expressed, and it just expressed when I was having a near-death experience. So I don't know which one it was. But I used to watch a lot of Oprah that year, and Oprah said, the universe will tell you, and it'll come slowly, and then it'll hit you like a ton of bricks. And then to me, that hallucination was that. And then I was like, yeah, that's the sign, and I need to follow it. And so that gave me the confidence to, even though every single person apart from my friend Nick thought, I'm a lunatic and that I was demented from the malaria when I got out of hospital. But no, it turned, and then, and 5 years on from that, when I was still struggling actress and performing to 10 people in a theatre in Sydney, and and didn't have enough money to go to my 5-year high school reunion. And people were like, oh, you're still doing the acting thing? And I was like, yeah. And it just, but I mean, eventually it all worked out, but it was a bit of a struggle to keep the faith and keep believing that I could be an actress.
I also didn't realize that before, we'll get there in a second, when you got to Hollywood and you got Bridesmaids and exploded here, that you had a significant career in Australia. I mean, there were a couple of big TV shows that you did.
Yeah, I think I did like 13 TV shows. I was at law school, and then I started by second year law school. I was on television already, and I did the law school as a backup just in case, and to keep my parents happy. And so I did that. But yeah, but I was probably the most like famous younger female in comedy in Australia, which is why I think I could just come over to America and bypass a lot of the steps. I don't know, I was saying this to Jess backstage, I don't know how if you just came to America like me with a suitcase, I don't know how you'd make it. Like it was hard. I was lucky because of all the work I'd done in Australia.
And one of those shows was called Bogan Pride. And explain what Bogan
is like, if anyone's not been to Australia, it's kind of like white trash, I guess. And I was definitely a bogan growing up. We kind of had mullet hairstyles and, like a real spiky fringe and like long at the back. And we like terrible fashion sense, and we'd love like all-you-can-eat buffets because of the value. So that was like so I kind of really related to boganness. And then I'm now what's called a cashed up bogan, which means like I've got a bit of money and but still, not that much class, but maybe I have a little bit. And so Bogan Pride was a show like based on lots of elements of my life, and my mum hated it, of course, because in one of the opening scenes I'm wearing a swimsuit and I put a fake merkin on to look like I had like unruly pubic hair. And my mum watches it and is just like horrified.
Yeah, she's not proud at all.
She's still to this day, and about the book as well. Horrified about the things I say and do. But to me, like it was this original musical series, and I wrote the little songs in it, and then that was a DVD that got passed around in Hollywood, and people at William Morris saw it and were like, like come to America. So I sold everything that I owned, every single thing.
Well, they said come for a meeting.
Yeah, they didn't even really offer me representation. They just said come for one meeting. So I sell everything I had at age 29 and thought, okay, I'll come all the way over to America with one suitcase and this one meeting. And luckily they signed me. That was my second day in America. First day was rubbish because I didn't know how to drive and I got a parking ticket. I didn't know that red means you can't park there. It was terrible, but second day got signed by like the big agency, and then started auditioning for movies, and luckily Bridesmaids was my first. It was about my 30th audition, but really quickly in like a month or two, yeah.
And what was your reaction to all of a sudden you're at WME, this is a big agency, you have important agents, and what was that culture shock for you? Because, Hollywood agents are their own kind of thing. Like, what were the things they would say to you? I got advice. I maybe tried to game the system, but I got advice about Australia. We have a cultural thing where you don't really talk yourself up. It's like not a cultural, you just kind of say, like, are you good at acting? Oh, I'm all right. That's what Australians say. But I got advice from my friend who'd booked like one movie in America, and he was like, you just got to sell yourself. So I went in there to WME and I said, I'm the next Jonah Hill. Like I'm the female Australian Jonah Hill, and I'm going to crush, And so I just went in with that game plan of, even though I'd done a lot of different acting, I just went with that comedy pigeonhole and kind of went with it. What was the audition process for Bridesmaids like? Because when you went into audition, you went into audition for Megan, which was Melissa McCarthy's.
Yeah, and Melissa was always going to get it because she was like their friend from Groundlings, and she wasn't the big star that she is today. I think she'd done Gilmore Girls or something, but not much. And so they needed an alternative choice to bring in, so like some poor person to come in and try, but they're probably not going to get it. And then I come in, and then there's Kristen Wiig sitting on a stool, and she's like really famous from Saturday Night Live. And then behind the camera is Judd Apatow and Paul Feig, the director, and then the casting director, Alison Jones, who's made so many people's careers. And they're just like, okay, just improvise. You're at a wedding with Kristen, go. And then somehow a normal audition back in the day would take like 10 minutes max. And then I started improvising, and we go for an hour, and we end up like, we're miming snorting cocaine through our belly buttons. And like, it just went crazy. And I guess they were enjoying it, so they kept it going. And then I go, that must have been a really good audition, because it went for so long. And then I get a call the next day, and they're like, you got it. And I was like, what? And I thought I'd got the Megan role, which I knew was the best role in the script. And I went, what? And they go, oh, not that role. They're going to add you in because they liked you, but they're going to give the role to Melissa McCarthy. But they loved you so much that they're just going to add you in, and you're going to be another roommate to Kristen. And you can just, improvise like what you did on the day. And so I was like a bit upset that I didn't, because I thought I'd got that role. And then they go, a different role. And then they go, aren't you happy? Like, because to get a job like that with those, legendary people. And I was like, yeah, but then I was like a bit upset I didn't get it. I knew that Melissa McCarthy role was going to like crush. It was very, very funny on the page. And, but it was worked out how it was meant to work out. I was meant to just have that role, and I met Matt Lucas on that, who then became my real life roommate. And he was a huge comedy star in the UK and taught me a lot.
Yeah, you were very familiar. He was sort of not an idol maybe, but you were very familiar with him, a big fan of his.
Yeah, definitely. My dad had given me a doll of him, like for Christmas, like 2 years earlier. It was freaky. And now I'm like, and I used to go, I do look a bit like him. And then now I'm playing his sister, and he was a huge, Little Britain was like one of the highest selling comedy DVDs ever or something. I could be wrong on that. And it was insane to get to work with him on my first job, and then become real life roommates like we were in the movie. Yeah.
Whose idea was it to pour the peas on the tattoo?
I can't remember.
It's still one of my favorite moments in all of film.
I just remember the tattoo was supposed to be Hip Hop Garfield, and I was like, I prepared all these jokes, I know improvising, but sometimes you prepare the jokes beforehand. And I was like, prepared all these great jokes for Hip Hop Garfield. And then I get in at 4 a.m. in the morning for them to do the tattoo on first day of filming. And they're like, oh, we can't do that because of legal reasons, because, they couldn't clear the Garfield. And so they're like, we're just going to draw something weird on you. And it was like this Mexican drinking worm. And I was like, oh, okay. And then, so I get up, 4 a.m. in the morning, and it takes them like 2 hours to do this weird tattoo on me. And then I had to wrap myself in cling wrap each night and not wet it, so that for the whole week I could just have that tattoo. And so, because they didn't want to redo it on me every day. So for all week I couldn't really shower properly and just had this cling wrap around me. And then I think it was like on the last day when they're like, oh, do you want to do the tattoo bit? And I'm like, yeah, maybe. Do the tattoo bit. And then it was just, but I can't quite remember whose idea was the peas or what. We were just really making up that stuff a lot, and just doing wild takes of crazy shit. Yeah.
And the movie comes out, it's a big hit, but you write in the book that it was, you were really you got $3,500 for the movie. You're trying to live in LA in a little apartment in Los Feliz.
Yeah, which was the price I had to pay to join our lovely union. So I really got nothing. I lost money because I had to go to the premiere, and pay for your dress and your shoes. It's not like anyone's going to give you free stuff when it's your first movie. So yeah, so I think I lost thousands of dollars
And
being in Bridesmaids.
Was that a lonely time? Like, what do you remember about? There's the high of getting this big break, really, and then there's also a very lonely time that you write about in the book.
So that first year coming to America was so tough because, like, yeah, you make no money and you can't earn any money any way else when you're on an O1 visa, which means you can only earn money by being an actress. And so like you don't earn much money at first, and I think I had $60 a week to live on. So basically I was going to Trader Joe's, getting like corn chips and cheap burritos and stuff, and I would do one activity a week, which was like to go to the movie cinema, obviously, and then that would be my $60 a week, and I had only budgeted for a year, and if I didn't make it in a year, then I would go back to Australia and, resume my career there. And so it was just tough because I didn't really know anyone. I had a manager who would sometimes come to the movies with me, but like it was really hard because I didn't I didn't know how to make friends or whatever. So it was that doesn't come that easily. So. It was a tough year because it basically takes a year from when you finish the movie to when it comes out in the cinemas. And I was just hoping, I was like, oh, are my 4 scenes good enough? Like, will I get attention? And I was like, Jonah Hill had 1 scene in 40-Year-Old Virgin and then had a career. And so I was like, okay, are my 4 scenes enough? And then I went to the ArcLight Cinema in Hollywood when the movie came out, and I saw people laughing, and I was like, oh, okay, hopefully. And then I booked 6 movies in the 2 weeks when Bridesmaids came out. Yeah, which was awesome. And then I thought, okay, I can stay in America. I'll have money, and I don't have to go back to Australia, a failure. But I felt very lucky though that Bridesmaids was my first job. It could have been a lot of other movies. I was almost in We Bought a Zoo with Matt Damon. I was very excited about that, and then they offered it to Scarlett Johansson, and I was like, damn. It could have been a few things. I got really close to a couple of things, but it was Bridesmaids.
Well, good thing you were in Bridesmaids and not We Bought a Zoo.
Out it was like a classic, so it was really good. Yeah.
So it was really from your perspective, at least writing in the book, it was really, though, Pitch Perfect that kind of catapulted you into a kind of global stardom.
Yeah, the day Pitch Perfect came out in 2012, I think, that was the day my life changed. Like, Bridesmaids was obviously a big hit, but I was a small part in it. But Pitch Perfect was when I really broke out. And then it's just weird. You notice it, like, you can't just go down to Gelson's in your tracksuit, anymore. Like, because people will take your photo or notice you. And it was really weird. And then we had paparazzi outside our house when that movie came out. And I was like, oh, God, waiters offering to sleep with you, Chateau Marmont, like it was like...
So all good stuff.
Yeah, well... and Matt's like, go for it. I'm like, no, I don't know him. And it was just, it's weird. It's like if you're in a movie that does blow up like that, and no one thought Pitch Perfect was, going to be huge. Like, it wasn't actually a Universal movie. It was an independent movie at first, and nobody thought it was going to be the hit, but I just knew if I was going to the movies, I would love to see something like that. And so I was telling everybody it was going to be a hit, and then it turned out it was, which was awesome. But but that was really my big break.
One of the fun things about the book, because I think you had success a little later in life, and also you just get the joke, kind of. You really give the reader a little window into like the world of celebrity perks, which are
I love a celebrity perk.
Yeah, you can tell.
Who doesn't?
And it's. I think it's also a lack of.
It's my boganness because we love
free
stuff.
It's the bogan lack of entitlement. I think that kind of. But you write frankly about money, and one was Pitch Perfect 3 is coming out. It's been this huge hit. You're offered $9 million to reprise the role, and what do you say?
But I hold out. I'm like, so it was a crazy situation. Universal did this focus group where they asked, it was about this size, and they asked participants, well, who would you have to see in the third movie? And we'd been told as the older girls that we weren't going to be needed for the third movie. So they never signed us up for a 3-picture deal like some of the other cast. And then how this happened, I don't know, but my housekeeper's niece was in the focus group. And she told me Fat Amy ranked real high. So I was like, they offered me like the biggest paycheck ever. I'm like, you know what? I think I just need 1 more million to make it that 10 million, because that just seemed like a very significant number to me. And then, you know, what could they do? They had to say...
Well, they had to have you. Yeah.
That's my law school training, knowing I had the leverage. Yeah.
So what had, and maybe this is hard to answer, but what had changed in the time when you were this, you know, shy, introverted girl allergic to dogs, and now you're like, no, I just need 1 more million to make it a 10.
Yeah.
Like what was the seminal event between then and then that you think gave you the confidence or made you think, you know what, I need to flex my self-worth and know what it is?
Well, the malaria-induced hallucination, weirdly, it gave me the confidence, like, because it was like I'd seen it, and even though I know I haven't won an Academy Award, but like, it just gave me the thought that I could. But then one of the biggest things of getting over that, being that girl that went so red in the face and couldn't talk, like could not talk in front of you guys like today, was basically my mum. She was like sick of it as well, of me being so shy and not having any friends. And so she dragged me to these local community drama classes. And literally, like, I'm like, where are we going? She didn't tell me. And then we stopped and we're at this community centre. And I was like, what's happening? And she's like, oh, you're going in. I've signed you up for drama classes. And I start crying, holding onto the car door. She's ripping me off. And suddenly she has like this strength of like 10 men. She's ripping me off. She pushes me in and says, I'll see you at 5. And then like leaves. And it was so traumatic. And I cried and I had like this mental snap, because it really was hugely traumatic for a shy person to be, you know, a room with teenagers who were extroverts and, you know, loved drama. And then I went and I had like this brain snap, and I just started talking in an American accent, because it's too traumatic to be myself in the situation. And I'm like, hi there. And just like pretended to be somebody I wasn't, because that was the only way.
What is it again, the American accent?
Hey there. Like, hi. And they're like, oh, how long have you been in Australia for? I'm like, 4 months, something, I don't know, like a terrible American accent. And basically my mum did it to help my self-esteem and self-confidence. And there's so many studies that say that being involved in the performing arts for young people can really help them find their voice and their self-esteem. And so mum obviously never thought I would be an actress, but she did it. And even though she did it in a very brutal way, it was very seminal in like, me, you know, then having the career that I have. Because if she'd never done that and I'd never forced myself to have to interact and express myself, I would probably be living a very different life.
You said earlier on that the book sort of started out as, here's a book about how I got healthy. You actually start the book with, you know, a moment when you decided I need to make a change in my life. Can you tell us a little bit about that moment? Yeah.
So the book kind of starts with me going to see a fertility doctor in Beverly Hills, and he looks me up and down when I said I wanted to freeze my eggs, and he's like, but you'd have a much better chance if you were healthy. And I guess because I was so successful and I was living this large life and going all around the world and making millions of dollars, I didn't think of myself as unhealthy. Like, I didn't have any serious diseases or anything. I mean, I probably would have if I kept continuing like that. But, and so I was just like, oh, and it really hit me like, oh, I'm not a healthy person. And that was right coming up to my 40th birthday. And so I thought, well, in 2020, not knowing a global pandemic was going to happen, and that, you know, a lot of people focused on their health, that year I knew I wasn't going to work much, and I was going to really focus on my health for the first time.
And you say really bluntly in the book, I guess deep down, I mean, you were exploring why you were polluting your body with toxic food, and you say, I guess deep down, I think of myself as trash. And can you talk a little bit about digging down to that part and then facing that part of yourself?
I guess because I was an emotional eater and using food as a crux, and I think it's because I didn't feel like I wasn't worthy, you know, and I didn't feel lovable. And so I was like, well, you're trash, you know, like, so you can just eat this and consume all these bad things for yourself because you're not worthy of being healthy, or like, and it's hard to go back in your life and there's not like one big thing that I can point to about why I felt like that. Like part of it was, I don't know, being born a girl in the area I grew up in and just not being valued as much, but I guess it's hard for some people to understand when they see me being so confident in some areas of my life, like within my career, but then feeling like like I wasn't good enough and wasn't worthy, and I still, you know, I think there's still things to unpack in there, although I think I talk about some things in the book about why that is, but I don't know, and it's sad, and it makes me sad when I think about it. I've definitely come a long way, but I think that's why I never had really any real intimate relationships earlier, because I just didn't feel worthy of that.
That was, I mean, it is, when you say you lost your virginity at 35, the first question is why? And you actually articulate that really well in the book.
Yeah, oh, thanks. It's so weird to like write about that. Like literally nobody knew that. And then I write it in the book and I send it to the editor and I was like, oh, now one person knows. And then now lots of people know, which is really embarrassing. But I just think I used weight as a barrier. I didn't want to have a marriage like my parents had, and I didn't want something like that to happen to me. And so it was a barrier to keep people away. And, you know, I had to shed those barriers, I think, during my year of health and really work on the emotional side of things.
And how did you find the guy? His name is Mickey?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Mickey. Well, I didn't. I got set up with him from my friend Hannah from Pitch Perfect. And I was just like, oh, wow, he's a very handsome, charming. I thought he was very funny. And I thought because I'd waited so long, it had to be somebody that I was really into. And I literally thought, oh, this guy's amazing. And I'd met his family, and so it was all really legit. And so I just thought, oh, he's the one. Yeah.
I thought it was so telling after you've gone through this kind of journey and you've tried to figure out why you were harming yourself and why you didn't have a healthy relationship with food. When it then came time to, choose the person that was going to be part of this momentous, moment in your life.
Well, it's not like I had 10 billion options either.
But you chose very carefully. I mean, you wanted to find the right person.
It was definitely someone I, was really into, and thought, oh, maybe I could get married, but I think in my 20s, I didn't really have anybody that was romantically interested. I was real good at being the friend to people, and I didn't, really didn't have any. So it wasn't like there was tons of people to choose from. But
the waiters at Chateau Marmont, apparently.
Oh yeah, but that was when you famous, and which was a bit different. Yeah.
When did the switch happen? Because obviously, I know friends that have had heterosexual relationships, and then all of a sudden, the great love of their life is someone of the same sex.
Yeah.
And it's not like they suddenly become gay. It's that they always, those desires and that wiring was always there. But what was the moment where you became comfortable with that part of yourself?
I think I knew. I mean, I went to an all-girls Christian high school, so I came from a very, conservative area, and no one of like the 1,000 girls there were gay. Obviously they were, but and I was in boarding school as well. Like, I wish I would have known back then. Could have been fun.
Yeah.
But basically, I don't know. I just always thought, I don't know. I liked it if there was a TV show or something and they had a lesbian scene or something, but I don't know. I just never thought to explore that side. And then, I write in the book, I'd had it, I guess you would call it a situationship with a professional tennis player. And I watched her play at Wimbledon and I started feeling these things. And I was like, oh my God. And so what age was I then? Oh, I was like, I can't remember how old I was. Maybe I was 39. So it was quite late. But I guess I just never thought I was 100% straight, but I definitely knew, I was attracted to guys, but I just said never. And I think if I was 20 years younger, like the kids are today, I would have been fluid or whatever, so I wish, parts of me are jealous of the kids who are so open now and, can date a guy, can date a woman, can date anybody. And it's not a big deal, but it was quite a big deal from the area I came from, and so I never explored that part. But I don't know, I guess maybe from a teenager, but I just never explored it.
And now you're engaged.
Yeah, I forgot
Ramona.
my ring today. I was like, I did. Yeah, engaged to a woman. Spoiler alert. And it all worked out great. And if I'd never had that situation with the tennis player, I don't think I would have been open to even going on a date with a woman. And so it was awesome that was my trajectory and that happened. And then suddenly now engaged, which I never thought of either, that I would get engaged
And a baby.
Yeah, and I have a baby now, who's amazing. I have a little girl, and she's almost a year and a half, and she's just the most awesome, beautiful thing, and she's she's just incredible.
So you and Ramona are together, and you really like this person. How nerve-wracking was it to then tell her, and by the way, this fertility stuff is happening, and I'm going to have a baby?
Yeah, because I didn't know I would meet somebody and start having a serious relationship, and so I'd planned to have a baby by myself, and I had the means to do that. And so very early, I think we've been dating for 3 months, and I said, oh, by the way, I'm going to have a baby towards the end of the year. And I go, if you want to leave, totally fine, I get it. And she just looked at me really seriously, and she goes, I will love your baby as much as I love you. And I was like, oh, and she really meant it. And I was like, whoa, because I'm not sure if I was dating a guy, if it wasn't their biological child, I'm not sure they would have. I mean, I guess it depends on the person, but Ramona's reaction was amazing. And then it almost seemed like it was fate that we were supposed to meet at that time. And she came into my life at the most, perfect time. She's an amazing mother to Royce. She's way better than what I am. I'm pretty crap. Ramona cooks meals of organic chicken and broccoli and every day for Royce, and I'm like, do you want to watch TV? I'm the fun mum. Yeah.
I remember when you announced that you were together with Ramona, you did it under duress because a journalist in Australia had called and was like, I know she's with this woman, I'm going to out her, and it forced you into it. And I knew that story, but it was really fascinating in the book to get your perspective on what those moments were like. Like you were on the street, parked in your car, about to go in somewhere. What were those moments like? Because it was, not only were you with this woman, but suddenly the entire world was now about to be told about it.
And I feel like it was more awful for Ramona, who wasn't in the public eye. And suddenly this journalist is threatening to out us, and it wasn't something we were keeping secret. We'd been to the Vanity Fair Oscars party together, but it just was something I didn't think you had to announce in this day and age, and we were slowly telling people in our lives, but not everybody knew at that point. And so it was kind of horrible to get an email going, well, we're going to out you, basically. And then, well, I'm like, well, no, I'm just going to out myself, and put it on Instagram, my favourite form of putting out messages, and it was probably a few months before we were ready to do it, but we were close to probably doing it. But it was just my relationship with some of the Australian press is not great, and I just thought like it was pretty poor form of them to do that. But you know, it happened the way it happened, and you know, and I'm very proud of Ramona and my relationship with her. So, you know, I was like, well, we're just going to put it on social media.
Did that cause a lot of stress on the relationship?
Not on the relationship really, but more for Ramona, because she comes from Latvia, and with LGBTQ, like it's not like it is in other countries. So. So that's, you know, the impact on her was, you know, a lot more. I was lucky, you know, I had to tell my mum and everything, who only knew like a few months before that, and she was just like, "Oh, that's great, darling. What colour should I paint the side fence?" It wasn't really that big of a deal, and she reacted amazingly. But Ramona's family, not so much, and so it's really more difficult for her.
What did, I mentioned in the beginning, it's so moving the way you write about your dad, and you know, I felt bad for him, felt really bad for his kids and his wife because of the kind of the white hot rage that would often come out. But it seems like in dealing with the death of your father, you also learned an awful lot about forgiveness. And that was something that I didn't necessarily expect to read in this book, and it's really beautiful. And do you think of it that way? Having the journey you took to forgive him?
I don't know. I mean, our relationship was like pretty estranged up until like Pitch Perfect came out, and he came to this family and friends screening we were having, and then we were slowly starting to connect again, and via email, because I wasn't ready to give him my phone number, and then I think I had so much anger towards him, and then that kind of turned to more pity, and then I think in writing the book I saw, you know, I could see more things from his point of view and his life, having his father die, you know, tragically. So, and the anger that would have caused him. And so I think, I don't know, I mean, there's a lot of sadness there, but I think it's, but I did, you know, forgive him for a lot of the things he did to me and my family. And I just, you know, but it's hard. And I just, that stuff just came up in writing the book, and it's almost like as an actor, sometimes if you have to do an emotional scene and you trigger yourself with certain memories. And when I was writing the last time I see my father alive, and it just is, I just can't help but cry. And in the audiobook, I mean, I haven't listened to it, but I did break down in it when I was just reading it, and even though I knew what was in the chapter, but it just, it just takes me back to there, yeah.
It is really moving, and it's like anybody with a parent identifies. You know, it's a great part of the book.
I was wondering if you could take us back to the airline flight that you took from Australia to here. What was your mindset when you took that trip and changed or were in the process of changing your life?
So that was when I was like 29, and I'd sold everything I had. Even like the toaster, I signed it and got $20 for it, even though it was shit. And I just had this mindset of like, which is a bit crazy when I think about it, because the odds of making it in Hollywood, like I probably, if I was a guy, I'd have more odds of like making it in the NFL. and it is millions to one. But I had like, I guess the way to describe it would be like kind of like an Olympic athlete focus of making it. And so my goal, wasn't to go partying or I don't know, or even make any friends or whatever. It was literally to be successful. And I thought if I can get in one movie, Hollywood movie, then that would be the goal. So that was the only goal I had, to get in one Hollywood movie. And then I thought people would respect me more in Australia if I could achieve that, because I'd worked in the movie cinemas as a casual job and in the box office, and when people would come up and ask what movies are that, and if you said something's Australian, they're like, oh, nah. They only really like the Hollywood movies. So I thought if I could get in one. So I just had this mindset of like, okay, I'm just going to make it. I'm going to do my one meeting at WME and hopefully get signed. And then, but I didn't really have a game plan. Just like this confidence that it will happen and that I can do it, and that I'll give myself a year, because I wasn't going to be super crazy. And if it didn't work out in a year, I'd just go back. And then I always thought, well, I can be a lawyer if it doesn't. If everything fails, I can just still go back and be a lawyer. So I guess I had a backup plan. But it was, I don't know, it seems a bit delusional at the time why I thought I could be successful over here. But I don't know. But I am proud that I took a gamble and, risked everything and came over.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing everything today. I do have a question related to the Sasha Baron Cohen thing, not directly, but I did see a headline that was saying Rebel Wilson's bombshell claims are catalyst for his divorce, which to me sounds absurd that would be the reason for that. But I was just curious what your thoughts were about that and that coverage of that.
Well, I don't think I had anything to do with the divorce. I think maybe his own actions towards multiple people had something to do with the divorce. And from what I was told, it actually, was starting the process like last year. I think just some of the headlines put pressure on them to announce it. But I think Isla's like an amazing person, and the sad part about all that was that I was friendly with her, not good friends, but friendly. And the sad part was after that stuff happened on Grimsby, I just didn't ever talk to her ever again. And so I really wish her well and hope it's all right. But no, I don't think like anything with me had anything to do with it, because I think there's other stuff involved.
Hey, thank you so much for all your honesty this evening. I just wondered, lots of great comedy actors are on the wonderfully voluptuous side, and I just wondered before your year of health whether you were worried at all that ironically Hollywood might love you less if you were a smaller form, whether that kind of came into your thinking, or whether you got any advice on whether that would impact your physical comedy. Yeah,
well, some of my own agents were like, oh yeah, don't lose weight, like you will lose your multi-million-dollar deals. And they thought I'd be crazy to do that. But when I was at university, I did a subject called Comedy and Power, and it was so interesting, and it was kind of about the science of what people laugh at. And normally if somebody has a physical irregularity, they're kind of primed for comedy, and that's why a lot of people are overweight, or they're super tall or super short, or they've got something that you can use. And so when I lost weight, I thought, it is one of the things in my comedic toolkit that I am losing. Although, lately I've let myself go a bit, so I don't know, I might slowly inch it back. But but really, as a comedian, it's really your personality, and you have so many different things in your comedy toolbox to use. And so, yes, I did rely heavily on being overweight. You know, I became famous playing Fat Amy. But I don't know, I was really pleasantly surprised when my movie senior year came out after I'd lost weight, and it got something like 90 million unique Netflix views in the first 10 days of when it came out. And so I was like, well, okay. So, I mean, there were some haters out there that were like, oh, you're not funny anymore. But that movie did really well. So I'm like, you know, it's just maybe changing some of the parts. But, you know, but it was definitely, like, people from my own team were saying, oh, don't lose weight. And then also on social media. But again, I just thought my health is important, and I've got to do that for me. So I was almost, if it happened and I'd never worked again in a comedy capacity, then I'd be like, well, that's what happened.
And now you just directed your first movie.
Yeah.
So you're doing fine.
Yeah, things are going pretty good. I've just been a marathon effort directing a musical film in Australia called The Deb that is so joyous, and it's just so me, and it's about a girl who goes to a debutante ball in a small country town. And there hasn't been an Australian comedy that's cracked it over here in quite a long time. And so I'm really hoping that one will be the one, because I put my heart and soul into it.
Yeah. Hi. Fellow Aussie and Bogan here.
Oh, yeah.
How do you handle tall poppy syndrome, or I guess here we'd call it cancel culture? How do you emotionally handle that?
It's hard, like when I had this big defamation case in Australia that was very high profile, and because basically these tabloids tried to take me down when I was at the height of my fame, when Pitch Perfect 2 was just a massive worldwide hit. And it's really hard, because I remember saying in the court case, like, if I was your sister or your daughter, and you know I'd worked my ass off every single day since I was an adult to have that career, would you just go and say one day, I'm going to write shit about this person and chop them down? Because, like, if they really knew me and how hard I'd worked, like, so you get this sadness, but now it's kind of like you've come to expect it. Like, high-profile Australians get this kind of treatment in Australia, and in the UK, high-profile people in the UK get it from their press as well. It's not so much a thing in America, which is maybe why I live here now. But I don't know, I guess you just gotta, but it is upsetting. I don't know, because I was successful, some people hate me in Australia. So it is upsetting, but then it just comes with it. And at the end of the day, I'd much rather be successful and have some people hating me. But yeah, it's a weird cultural thing in Australia.
And it was unusual that you sued.
Oh,
and won.
Yeah, and won against a $1
settlement.
billion media company. And yeah, it was good. My Australian agent said I stood a little taller after that court case. Not a fun thing to go through, but I'm glad I stood up for myself.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you ever see yourself taking on dramatic roles, and like, what do you think it would take to like convince people to kind of take you seriously in that realm? And I also love you, by the way.
Yeah. Hi. I think it's hard because in America people have only mainly seen me do comedy, whereas back in the day I was a stage actress for many years and did Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe plays and all these like really intense stuff. Although I did just play Lady Capulet in a movie. It's coming out. It's called Verona. It's like a Romeo and Juliet in 13th century Italy. So that's interesting. I love that I play a mother of a 24-year-old. I go from like a college student to a mother of a 24-year-old real quick. But I don't know, I'd had this great chat with Robin Williams a few months before he passed, and he told me, like, he's like, you can do drama as well. Like, he goes, I can see it in you. But I also think it's hard to have been doing so many broad comedies. It's hard to make the transition, and it's got to be the right project. But I've been dipping my toe in and doing a few things. I have this serious movie that's called The Almond and the Seahorse that I did in Verona. And so there's a couple little things coming out, but I think I need just the one juicy role that is, I don't know, a stepping stone or a hybrid or something. Because I'd love to show off those skills that only really people from Sydney saw when I was like treading the boards, and, you know, back in the day. But it was, yeah, but hopefully, but I don't know, but maybe people might not want to, they might want to see the comedies more, but I don't know, but we'll see. But I'd like to do more serious stuff.
Hello, so as an aspiring actor and also using law as a backup, do you have any tips for like working towards those goals?
I mean, the good thing about doing a law degree is I did like all my first negotiations. So like back in the day, I was like the first person to like contract directly with a network to have my own show. I wasn't a huge production company, I was just me. So it's like, it's actually really cool, and there are a few correlations. You know, with law stuff, it's, you know, a lot of written and oral communication, and that can sometimes help. So I would say, because you're obviously pretty smart, like also get into writing as well, because that'll help your acting career, like big time. If I couldn't write, I don't think I would have a career, because my first thing was a play that I wrote, and that's how I got on Australian television. So probably like your brains are probably an advantage. Not saying like all actors are dumb or anything, but some
But you're
are.
not saying it.
Yeah, but not saying that. So you can use your brains, you know, to have a slightly better strategy or slightly, you know, and competitive advantage in the business.
Thank you so much. I was just curious as to where do you see yourself in about 10 years? Like, what are some goals that you would like to accomplish between now and then?
I think Prime Minister of Australia. No, I don't know. Because directing was a huge thing that I hadn't done. Although weirdly, I mean, the politics thing, I don't know. And that was just a huge thing to go from never having directed to directing the whole movie. But I hope just to have a better balance. I don't think being a new mum, I don't really have got it worked out. And I want to spend more time with my family, but I'm also a workaholic. So I think I would like to have a better balance in my life, if that's a thing. And probably, you know, writing more feature scripts and doing that, which is really, really rewarding. And hopefully maybe having my Malaria vision come true and winning an Academy Award. That would be the pinnacle. But again, doing broad comedies, I'm not going to get that from that, because comedy is not respected. Although even though I'm in the Academy and I keep writing when they like say, "I'll give us feedback," and I'm going, maybe you have a like comedy category, or recognise more comedic performances. But who knows whether they will. But that would be super cool, like to win an Oscar. But I don't know. I'll have to see whether my vision was real or not.
Thanks, Jess. Thank you, Rebel.